All right, and we thank you so much for the unique co-creation of this interaction. As always, it is our civilization's highest joy, passion, excitement to be able to speak to you and to members of your species through the channel. We extend to you the following question: how are you doing this day of your time?
Huh. Oh, I don't know, hanging in there, I guess.
All right.
And I know I don't have to ask you. You're always perfect, right?
We are ecstatic and delighted to be here with you in this frequency of the now. And remember, you as well technically are perfect. Many of you may create the experience that somehow you are not, or that you are something other than your natural perfection. But remember, creation makes no mistakes, so whatever is naturally perfect.
It's a good way of looking at things. I tell people that sometimes. So I'd like to start, I guess the natural way, start with you and me and then spread out from there.
All right.
I've heard your name pronounced Ryok and Ryok and spelled two different ways. Is there one better than the other, or is it tomato, tomato?
They are, in a sense, different vibrational terms that are used to address my frequency. The term you understand as Ryok represents a vibrational signature that I shared with the channel initially during our earlier phases of contact. As the channel began to introduce me to your civilization, the name Ryok became more commonly pronounced and utilized. So Ryok, in that sense, is a more, you could say, original term, and Ryok, in that sense, is a newer term. Both can work. Both are fine.
And does it translate to something in English?
It relates to the idea of teacher energy, guiding energy, in terms of its translation.
Cool.
It's not a literal translation. It's more of an energetic compilation of qualities that you translate as a word.
And where are you located? Are you in a
I am
ship?
currently above the area you call Sedona, Arizona, with a few other species at this time.
Oh, cool. Is the one known as Bashar there too?
Yes, as well.
Cool, cool. I love you guys. If you wouldn't mind testing your detection abilities, I've seen you have such incredible abilities. Can you tell what I'm holding in my hands?
Understand that information will travel through the path of least resistance.
Hmm.
You are already well aware of that which you are holding in your hands, yes?
Yes.
Therefore, the information is already accessing you through that path, which is your awareness of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
We operate based off the path of least resistance. That is why there is some information we are not able to share with you in relationship to the idea of that which may be relevant or not so much relevant for us to give. For example, some individuals will ask us for the names of their guides, to give you an example.
Yeah.
And the idea is the path of least resistance for the information would actually be them invoking their guide, invoking that contact, rather than us peering in and translating. There's actually more energy required for us to do that. So the information will reach you through the path where the energy can flow the easiest, which for you right now is your own knowledge base.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard a similar explanation, I think, from Bashar. But so let's jump into the deeper stuff. I work in the medical industry, and I have some negative views of seeing how much of the industry is actually harmful to health, and like many doctors basically being drug dealers for pharmaceutical companies and ignoring natural and healthier practices. And I struggle with seeing a lot of suffering and injuries and stress from people following their passions, like doctors, athletes, soldiers, artists. Can you help
Well,
adjust
remember,
my
you may
views?
assume that they're following their passion, but that may not actually be accurate to what they're doing.
Hmm. Okay.
Understand, there are different gradations in relationship to alignment with one's passion. One can know that playing an instrument is something they love to do, but they may find that they play the instrument utilizing energies that represent lack of self-worth, the inability to really express oneself clearly and honestly, and that in a sense creates a mixed effect. The expression through the instrument is partially passion, it's partially their joy, but those qualities are dampened and are coded with other let's just say, burdensome frequencies or excess frequencies that you might consider to be the negative overlays. So that can happen. And then, of course, you have some individuals that don't really want to be doing the jobs they're doing, but told themselves that that's what they needed to do in order to fit in or to create a certain self-image. So understand, with individuals, there is a lot at play. They are as equally complex and as multi-layered as you are. So just because you see someone doing something that they love, there may be more there than meets the eye. And it's best to, in a sense, not compare oneself to others, but rather use the energy, the understanding, the example of what others are showing you in a way that's empowering for you, such as these other practices. For it sounds like they are showing you through their example many things that you do not prefer and you do not prefer to create within your own medical.
Speaking of which, I was curious. That was also kind of a test. Don't be mad. But I was testing to see if you could tell that I lied.
All right. Well, the information still came through. The overarching themes still came through. It's all right that you're testing this. Remember, you're going to receive the idea of whatever major effects you are believing in from this transmission. So you can use us as a reflection for guidance, for insight into the idea of assisting you in exploring your life a little bit more fully. Or you can utilize this as a barometer for, is this actually a connection to something? Is this actually something that is legitimate? It will become either of these things for you. We do not care which way you utilize it. We encourage you, utilize it in whatever way is most exciting for you.
Oh, I totally believe you're legitimate. I was just kind of, testing your, seeing like how far you can go. And, it was a minor lie. I don't work in the medical industry. I have been unemployed for a while now, but I wanted to see if that, like, if you could pick up on that, I guess. But
there are certain things we're able to pick up on, but remember, there are blinders that are imposed, so to say, by our consciousness when we interact with you. So there are some things that we do not need to see because for us it's not necessarily as important as other things that may be, again, overarching points of guidance, because that's our main role, to be guiding forces for your species, which is a little bit different than the role of a psychic. You understand this?
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
But so you're doing a very good job. Although I'll get into some other questions I have about some of your core teachings, which I'm still a little on the rocks about. But first, in terms of important subjects of health, I do have somewhat, negative definitions of the medical industry since I've been dealing with it more recently, dealing with a medical issue of my own. Can you detect that at all? Can you tell what's wrong with my body?
Well, if you can, please share. Remember, we are a mirror. We reflect to you what you are bringing to us. So share a little bit, if you will, whatever you feel comfortable, and we can begin to explore it. What is the imbalance? What is the nature of the
imbalance? Joint issues, my hip and knees mainly, starting to spread to my back a little bit as well.
All right. Have you allowed for yourself to ensure that your hydration levels are adequate and that you are consuming waters that are purified, devoid of toxins?
I'm doing that right now, yes.
All right. Have you allowed yourself? Yes, continue.
Oh, I've heard you talk to some other people about more like Tai Chi and Qigong exercises, which I've been doing a little bit more of. And yeah, I went like I said, through the kind of normal medical route here, and they were just prescribing drugs, and I tried acupuncture. That didn't really work.
All right. And this can be the case for many individuals, which is why we are going to inquire about a few other things. Have you ensured that your diet is devoid of the idea of excess sugars?
Yes.
All right. What do you find yourself eating throughout the day?
Eating, it varies. I'm mostly vegan with, a couple exceptions here and there. Mostly gluten-free with, some exceptions here and there. So, I mean,
All right.
I don't know if that clears it up.
Are you
I try to
consuming
cut down.
are you consuming a great deal of fruit, or would you say moderate fruit for you?
Moderate, like
Moderate.
an apple a day or something like that. Or,
All right. Are you allowing for your food to be cooked, or are you consuming it raw?
mostly cooked.
All right.
I mean, I do, the raw, fruits and vegetables sometimes.
One moment. Have you allowed for yourself to go through a detoxification process?
I mean, I've thought of that as, I mean, we all fast really just to different degrees, but probably not to the degree that you mean it.
You don't necessarily have to do a fast. That's one way to go about detoxifying, but there are other ways. There are different types of modalities that involve the consumption of things like what you call chlorella, the idea of activated charcoals, the idea of saunas. These types of things can be quite cleansing. There are also other compounds, such as what you call methylsulfonylmethane, MSM. These are certain things that can be used to expedite and enhance the detoxification capacities of your system. All right, we thank you for this co-creation. Let us continue in whatever way, shape, or form you deem appropriate. Would you like to continue where we left off?
Yes, thank you. Actually, synchronistically, I wanted to talk about my difficulties with technology as well, but well, I don't know. I've kind of got a list here, so we'll go in order here. Um, so I was asking, I couldn't tell if you said chlorella. Is that one of the things you said?
Chlorella is a certain type of algae that can be used for detoxification. There are other tools. The point being is fasting can be one way to detoxify. However, you may find that that's not the most preferred way for you. So we're letting you know there's some other tools out there. You have the chlorellas. There are things like activated charcoals. There are saunas. There are many tools that can be used to assist in this process. Have you allowed for yourself to engage in any of those particular types of tools, which you might consider to be other forms of detoxification aside from fasting?
No, other than, purified water, I guess. That's why I'm talking to you. I'd like to find out some potentially new ideas.
All right, all right. Well, fasting can be done, but if you do find it's a little challenging, the chlorella can be a very powerful way to detoxify the system. It can be purchased as powders, it can be purchased as tablets. There are many forms. The idea is to ensure, of course, that it is high quality, grown in preferred conditions and preferred locations, so it can be low in the idea of contaminants. And this can greatly assist the body's detoxification capacity. So you may find that this can help, as well as the idea of paying attention to any foods that you may be consuming in your diet that look healthy or look good, but may actually be creating the idea of an imbalance. Or some foods contain the idea, which you would consider to be defensive plant chemicals.
Defensive.
Yes, there are chemicals that are designed to push away the idea of predation experiences from animals, from humans, like the immune system of the plant. So certain plants can have higher amounts of these chemicals, and some of you can be a little sensitive to this. So this may also be a beneficial thing to look into as well.
Thanks, I will. I've written that down. Speaking of which, I had
Maybe
an
she's a little bit more with you.
Sorry, no, please.
All right, all right. The other thing to consider avoiding or reducing, if this is part of your diet, is the idea of what you would consider to be vegetable oils. Even though the plants and vegetables of your planet are very healthy and beneficial for the most part, when the oils are pressed, the idea is they oxidize very quickly. And these things, if they are present in the diet, can actually give rise to different inflammatory conditions. So this would be another thing we would encourage you to pay attention to, as well as the idea of stress reduction, ensuring you are creating periods of time throughout the day where you can really relax, where you can really let go, where you can really dial into the moment. This will also be beneficial. And the final thing we'll share with you on this, unless there's any other questions that you have, is for some individuals, these types of diets, vegan diets, vegetarian diets, are actually best suited cyclically. In other words, some individuals constitutionally, based off how their consciousness is creating their bodies, do not function optimally long-term on those types of diets. However, those types of diets can be used cyclically for a variety of different purposes. Many of the cultures on your earth who practice the idea of veganism or vegetarianism oftentimes were supplementing this with very powerful energetic practices. Therefore, they did not require the idea of animal products to nourish them because they were, in a sense, siphoning raw nutrition from the universe, from around them. So, for some individuals whom are not engaging in that kind of lifestyle, where there is a very powerful energetic practice, whom are utilizing vegan vegetarian diets, those individuals may benefit from only using those diets cyclically and consuming different animal products at different periods of time so the body can, in a sense, get a tune-up energetically from these animals. Of course, ensuring that they are organic, that they are humanely raised, and that they are respected and honored should you consume them. But this also is something to factor in as well, to really ensure that the way you are doing the diet is actually appropriate for you.
Cool. Yeah, when this first started, I did try going back to eating meat again just to see if that would change. I figured maybe it was like a protein deficiency or something, but that didn't work. So I went back to being mostly vegan. But anyway, I'll try that again. Thank you. I feel like some of this may be due to more, spiritual reasons, shall we say, like, or, again, definitions or something, you always talk about.
Does the pain in any way create the sensation in your consciousness of holding you back from anything?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm having, I can't walk as well as I used to or stand as much as I used to, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Is there any areas in your life where you are desiring to express yourself more, where you are desiring to expand more, but you are not allowing for yourself to do this for whatever reason? Any idea of like self-repression or anything of this nature?
Probably. I mean, maybe more I feel repressed. I've tried to use this in a positive way, meaning being more expressive and creative, making YouTube videos and channels and learning video editing skills, but I don't know.
And you're allowing yourself to go into that direction of making
videos?
Are there any areas that you're not expressing, that you're not following through in?
Sorry, what was that again?
Are there any areas of your life where you have certain dreams, certain passions you desire to explore, but you're not allowing yourself to?
Yeah, I'd like to do what you do.
All right. Well, have you practiced? Are you inquiring in any way? Are you investigating in any way this direction?
Yeah, I don't have a spaceship or any help in that area.
Well, that's in a sense a belief system. We remind you, you're actually in a spaceship right now.
How so?
Your body is able to transverse space, yes?
Okay.
You're in a spacecraft. You move through space and time, which again is something you actually create. Your body also operates like a spacecraft in the sense that it technically utilizes your consciousness's teleportation ability to create the experience of movement. So what looks like you moving in space is actually your consciousness teleporting from one parallel reality to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. So you actually are utilizing a spaceship.
Interesting. Wow, yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but well, speaking of which, I guess my spaceship is broken then. Like in the same subject, I recently went to a session with some people. They were viewing us with an infrared camera, and it showed that I had no legs. Everyone else, it was showing their whole bodies, and it would show up in a certain color and show this, movement of energy within them. But I was standing, but it looked like I didn't have any legs. I was just a floating torso. You have any insights on that?
It relates to the idea of what you might consider to be rooting or grounding yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We will explain. When the energy of your consciousness is not flowing holistically through your body, that can sometimes be picked up on certain types of technologies. So should this be the case for you, the idea would be to allow for yourself to remedy it through being outdoors, if you're able to, being barefoot, on your earth, if it's not too challenging of an environment, allowing for yourself to spend time in nature, ideally an hour a day if you're able to. This can very much so allow for you to utilize the Earth's frequency, the Schumann resonance, as a permission slip for healing, as a permission slip for transformation. You may find this can actually create a very powerful difference in relationship to the idea of the bodily discomfort that you had mentioned.
Yeah, it's good advice. I wish I could do that more. That'll get me into another topic about how I feel like I and many of us struggle with addiction to technology. Feel like that may be related. I mean, I have a lot of issues really. I feel like, lonely, worthless, unsuccessful, slightly crippled, depressed, suicidal at times, slave to technology. I feel like this is all, related.
Well, in a sense, it absolutely is, because what you're describing is the idea of the ideas, the belief systems, the definitions you have been utilizing to create your experience of your life. Now, we're not saying you're consciously choosing these things. The idea is that many of the underlying beliefs that give rise to the qualities you have mentioned are present, and their more superficial expressions are the manifestations of physical reality. So these external things you observe that you don't prefer can be traced back to the idea of your belief system. So we would encourage you, when you find yourself experiencing something you don't prefer, be it a behavior, a thought, a feeling, allow for yourself to slow down, to go into neutral acceptance of whatever it is to the best of your ability, and to allow for yourself to then utilize positive energy, a positive perspective of love for whatever the experience is, knowing it's ultimately you. It's ultimately your reflection in the mirror. And from that loving perspective, you begin to use the bird's eye view of the higher self to then investigate and inquire about what the belief systems might be that are giving rise to such external manifestations. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, I feel like, some of the beliefs being that I don't feel very compatible with this planet. Sometimes it feels like, I'm unwanted here, and I'd like to go somewhere else.
Well, remember, the idea of the addiction to technology, as you call it, and not necessarily being outdoors, can actually give rise to such feelings. When there's
Yeah,
a disassociation from the planet, you can end up feeling like a stranger sometimes in your own home, because your planet, more so than even your houses, is technically your home.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I this is my biggest challenge and struggle is it seems like everything you have to do on this planet now revolves around technology and like
Well,
looking at screens.
but not going outside for an hour, or 10 minutes, or 5 minutes, or 30 seconds, or however long you choose.
I do that. I do that.
Yes. Simply increase the frequency. Implement, if you can, barefoot or skin to earth contact. This will help. This will help ground you. Ideally, if it can be your feet on the earth, this will have a much more amplified effect.
So my I don't know. I guess obviously there's only so much you and others can do, but I feel like my grandmother's also suffering. Is there any, positive vibes or any guides you could send her way?
Well, she already has access to guides that are assisting her, and through this conversation, we are interacting with her lightly. Understand that, again, even for us to really work with individuals, there are certain levels of permission that are required before we can intervene in any way or do anything, so to say.
Yeah.
However, we can inquire about this. And in terms of what you're able to do for her, the idea is that as someone is transitioning, they are in a process of letting go of the physical reality experience and emerging into an energy state that represents more of who they are. So to be of service to her during these times, operate from a place of unconditional love, of joy, of abundance, and allow for yourself to really demonstrate those energies for her. For that energy state you'll be sharing represents the type of vibrational location, so to say, she'll be shifting to. So the more you can expose her to those frequencies, operate from those frequencies, the easier of an experience she will have in her process of transition into spirit. She'll know the frequencies very well. Through your example, it will be easier for her to make the shift.
I try to, I stay positive when talking to her, but I feel like not exactly the best example right now.
Well, you're doing the best you can, and that's all right. That's enough. And
Yeah.
know that you can always act on your passion more. You can act on your joy more. Increase it at whatever capacity you're comfortable with. And remember, accepting where you are now is what allows for you to then grow yourself from where you are now. But if anything in relationship to the present is rejected, is pushed away, then that expansion process is something that becomes inhibited in your experience. So accept that you are doing the best you're able to do and know that that's enough. And as you go into that acceptance, you will gain the ability to expand and increase the capacity to experience more of your preference and your expansion into your preferred direction.
Yeah, I've been trying to spin this positively, like, maybe this is to get me on a different path. Um, but yeah, it's taking some adjusting. I guess we'll get into what you call 5 laws. Um, maybe that'll help clarify. Uh, well, actually, maybe, I don't know if you can help with any guidance and like, what else I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I'm not having any success. Like the channel has, YouTube channels I've seen, and I'm not having any success with mine. So do I abandon that and try to get a job that I'm not as interested in, or?
Well, it sounds like you're expecting things to happen through what you're doing.
Well, I mean, I'm sharing what I have to share, and I see other people being very successful with that, but I am not.
Why
So
are
maybe,
you unsuccessful with it? What does that look like for you? Is that you don't have a lot of followers on your channels?
yeah, followers, views. I've had things removed for baseless reasons, censored, and
Well, you know, when the channel started, he only had a few subscribers per year.
yeah. Yeah, I see that it can take some time to bloom and grow and all that. So
It represents your passion. Follow it to the best of your ability, with no expectation of what it needs to do for you, knowing you'll receive more of that quality. But if you're expecting that more to come through a specific outcome, then you'll actually close the door for that more. So that's why we asked you about the idea of what are the different expressions of your passion that you're not allowing for yourself to take, because it sounds like the YouTube channel, the online videos is one expression. Follow that as far as you can take it. When you can't take it any further, go into the next most exciting direction. It doesn't mean you have to scrap it or abandon it. Feed that direction when you're excited to feed the direction. Remember,
Yeah.
your passion's multidimensional, it's multidirectional. One day it may look like going for a hike. The other day it may look like taking a nap. The other day it may look like calling a friend. The other day it may look like building a website. The other day it may look like playing some music. So on and so forth. It's going to look different. It doesn't have to be one direction you invest everything in. It can be multidirectional, and each of the different directions are then unified by the frequency of your passion.
I do that and I see that. It just kind of fits in with this larger theme I seem to be experiencing, where everything I've ever created, whether it's writing or video editing now, attempts in relationships, friendships, it doesn't seem to work out. I mean, again, I'm sure you're going to say that I have a very limited definition of what working out or success means, but it doesn't seem to be helping either myself or anyone else.
And what are you experiencing? Can you be a little bit more specific about the effects that you're creating for yourself?
Like, I've had friends disappear for what seemed to me to be no good reasons. Just, say they don't want to be friends anymore, or just stop talking to me. I've written a blog that I've shared. My parents have never even read anything I've written. I share it on social media. Nobody cares. I get 0 likes or comments or any feedback at all. So I'm kind of like at the point where, what's the point?
Well, do you enjoy interacting with these things? Do you enjoy doing these things in and of themselves without what they give you back? Do you enjoy the idea of interacting with others? Do you enjoy the idea of working on your blog? Do these things excite you?
Not as much now, since I'm not getting any feedback or positive reinforcement.
But that's not supposed to come from the outside. Understand that positive reinforcement comes from you. You're the one that grows these things. If your willingness to grow these things is dependent upon that which is external, your motivation to pursue and create these things that you're excited about in your life will constantly ebb and flow, because your motivation is dependent upon what others do. And if that's the case, you may find that you don't take very much action. The motivation must come from you. The reinforcement must come from you. No one's obligated to give you that. Nothing is obligated to give you that. Only you can give you that. And then, through you giving yourself that, in the mirror of external reality, then you begin to experience that reflection emanating back towards you through other individuals, through different events. But if you don't give yourself that, you'll not be able to detect it externally. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I wonder why, I see everyone else, getting. I know it's not just me, but sometimes it's like, why?
Remember, it's not about them. It's not about them. It's your experience. It's your life. Let other people have their experiences. You don't need to compare yours to them. People will have their experiences, again, as we have said at the beginning, for all types of different reasons. You're multi-layered. You don't always see what's going on with individuals. What's important is that you allow for you to focus on yourself and for you to feed these things you're passionate about for their own sake without needing anyone to even care about them. Knowing that if you've created it, there must be individuals who care. Because you can't have a one-sided coin.
I mean, I've thought.
If you've created a gift, it means there's another individual whom is designed to receive it. It might
Yeah.
not be the people around you. It might not be someone you meet for a year. You don't know. You don't need to worry about that, though. That's not your job. Your job is to just be yourself, and you are yourself when you do the things that represent you in your reality, your passion, your joy, for their own sake.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, I guess. But I don't know. I'm struggling with that. So maybe it has to do. I'll get into some of the laws you talk about. Maybe that'll clarify. Like, I don't know, man. We don't have much time left, but there's so much else I would like to talk about. But so I'll try to move quickly. These laws, are they like human laws? Where they don't really apply to everyone. Like if you reach certain densities, then the laws no longer apply.
The laws apply throughout the entire structure of creation. This is how creation operates.
Well, maybe we can refine them or clarify again. The first, the you exist. Would it also be accurate and perhaps more inclusive to say everything exists?
If that's how you want to say that. Remember, you are everything. You are all that is, experiencing itself as an individual. So when we say you, we are describing the idea of the totality of creation. It's just that many of you see you as a separate individual. That's not our perspective.
What about everything is here and now? Like that kind of trips me up because I don't see a helicopter or elephants or mountains or oceans, or in fact,
all right.
It seems to me almost everything is somewhere else.
Yes, from your perspective, it may appear that way. We will describe it to you in the following sense. Just how you have fictional stories in your physical reality, you could imagine the idea of another person's reality being a certain page in the book. You could then imagine your reality being another page in the book. You both exist at the same time in the same book. You're just on different pages, different frequencies of space and time. So it's all in the book. It's just your perception is, in a sense, limited to the page that you're on.
So, I mean, would it also, again, be accurate to say everything is in its own here and now?
In a sense, you could say this, yes, because you're all in your own unique frequencies of reality. So that could be said.
Cool, because that makes sense. Because I've heard you describe your ships traveling by changing the locational variable, and to me that sort of implies different locations, that everything is not here and now.
It's as we have said, it's all contained within the structure. It not being close to you in proximity or in time relates to the idea of your spatial awareness. Again, your spatial awareness being a page on the book. So when our craft are altering the idea of the locational frequency, it's as if we are appearing on one page, disappearing on another, appearing on one page, disappearing on another. We're still in the book. We're still right here, right now. Think of the book as all that is, of all of creation.
Cool. Yeah, a little bit. Just keep moving on. What you put out is what you get back. To me, that seems potentially like only half the equation. It seems also true that what you get is what you put out. So hence saying things, sayings like it takes a victim to make a victim, and children growing up in different environments, portray different traits. Does that make sense?
Can you repeat the beginning part of what you said? We were unable to discern your words through the chat.
Oh, when you say what you put out is what you get back, to me it seems like only half the equation. It seems also true that what we get is what we put out in terms of children growing up in different environments, displaying different traits, and sayings like, it takes a victim to make a victim. Does that make
Well,
sense?
understand that's still a level of this. What you get is what you put out. What you put out is what you get. You're saying the same thing. You've just rearranged the ideas.
Hmm.
It's the same idea. From our perspective, that's the same idea.
Well,
Please repeat yourself. The audio went down.
oh, sorry. I said, except for it seems to me like one is more internal and another is more, external conditions creating an internal state.
Understand that it might look that way from your point of view. It might look that way as if there are external conditions that somehow supersede you or are somehow independent of you. Remember, though, the ego consciousness, the physical reality consciousness, is only one level of your being. It might have no awareness that its energy is giving rise to the set and setting, the external environment. But those things are a part of your consciousness and are being generated by your consciousness. They're just being generated on another level of it. That's all. So even things that seem built in, even things that seem like that's just the way the environment is, that's coming from individual belief systems, which can be subconscious, they can be genetic in a sense, they can actually be passed down. It can also relate to the idea of collective consciousness belief systems that are giving rise to that, which is also your energy, which is also your consciousness. So all of these things that you see in your physical reality are things that you're putting out. Remember, just as we said with the idea of you, not necessarily just talking about the individual ego. We're talking about the totality of what you are. Does that make a little bit more sense?
Kind of. Maybe I have a problem with my definitions because to me it seems like I've been putting out love, happiness, helpfulness, peace, positivity, knowledge, and yet I've become incredibly alone.
You have also been putting out, as you have described, the idea of expectations and expectations on the idea of what life is supposed to do, which again reveals the idea of certain belief systems being used that are based on lack, essentially. Whenever you have expectations that someone must do this thing must happen this way, that's coming from a place of lack. So you have to recognize that that is also being put out through what you're doing. Have holistic vision to holistically evaluate yourself. As we have said, you have the idea of the energies you're consciously choosing to put out, but you need to zoom back a little bit more so you can see the other energies that are at play so you can get a better handle on how you are creating your reality.
Okay, I mean, does this apply to like a light bulb puts out light? Does that mean it gets light back, or does it not apply to?
In a sense, it does. However, again, it may not appear as literal as you may think, but remember, your own awareness is light. So in order for something to be in that sense, there must be another to observe it. So a light bulb putting out light, in a sense, receives light through the idea of another individual observing it. So you could say yes in that way as well.
Okay, I also have difficulty understanding, like if this is true, then that would mean that people like JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, Princess Diana, Gandhi, Abraham Lincoln, John Lennon, countless people were putting out assassinate me or assassination, and that doesn't make sense to me.
Again, you are making comparisons as well as the idea of assumptions on some of these individuals. You don't know. You don't know how they're creating their reality. You have no idea. You only see the tip of the iceberg with these
Well,
people.
I know they're assassinated.
Yes. Now, as we have said, there are many different levels to individuals. Many of these levels are unconscious. Some of it can relate to the idea of belief systems that they use that can actually attract certain events like that. Just as we have said, information will flow through the path of least resistance in the beginning, experiences in the physical reality will flow through the path of least resistance. The experiences that you draw to you will energetically be mediated by your belief system. So for some individuals, that can be an assassination. But however, there's other reasons. They may have created for themselves the idea of a soul contract to leave the physical reality in a way that would be bold, in a way that would leave an impact, and in a way that would allow for individuals to really understand in a deeper way some of the issues that are going on in your civilization. The path of least resistance for that may have been the idea of an assassination. So again, you don't know. You don't know why these things always happen. It's case by case by case basis. You're not always aware of what you're putting out. But as you gain awareness through being yourself, through following your joy, then you become more aware of that which you're putting out, so you can customize it, so you can tune it to being more resonant with that which you prefer. Does that make sense for you?
Kind of. I guess speaking of, you said, putting out light. I mean, that also to me seems like part of the equation. Talk about a lot about love and light, but I haven't heard a good, I haven't heard many people talk about hate talking with you. So what is hate? Isn't that part of us as well?
In a sense, it's an experience that you create through the illusory phenomenon of being devoid of love.
Mm-hmm.
Mixed with a few other things. It's a real experience. It's a part of you, but it doesn't represent your natural state. It doesn't represent your true core. It is like a cloud, so to say, in the sky.
Is that dismissive of part of us, or,
No. It's just not the idea of your basal level. It's a superficial creation.
But I mean, if we're all that is, doesn't that also include hate and darkness?
It does, but remember, the underlying quality of all that is unconditional love, because it unconditionally loves all versions of itself. That's why all versions of itself exist. Its underlying quality is unconditional love. So what you consider to be the hate and the darkness is technically, in a sense, from that all that is perspective, some of the more superficial aspects. It's not the basal level. It's not dismissive. We would compare it to this. An artist makes a beautiful creation. You don't look at the creation and say, look, that's the artist in their totality. You know it's just something they've made.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Does that make
Fair
sense?
analogy. Yeah, sure. I don't know what else I can squeeze in here. So I don't know. I guess it's a limited definition of like, how do I put out, $1 billion in a brilliant, beautiful woman who loves me, because that's what I would like to get back. I guess you would say I guess I don't need those things, or there's a limited definitions.
Pay attention to the energy of what they represent. They may look like those images, the energies, but pay attention to the energies that represent receiving the love that you prefer, receiving the abundance that you prefer. Pay attention to those energies and allow for yourself to apply those energies in your definitions of your life, in your definitions of yourself. There's nothing wrong with having those things. They may very well be, in a sense, relevant for you, but only you can really know that. Again, pay attention to the idea of your underlying motivational energies. If you are desiring those things from a place of lack, then they may not be very relevant. But if the desire is coming from a place of self-love, self-acceptance, appreciation, then again, know that's the match for your basal that represents your true core. So those things would be very relevant. Again, pay attention to the energies, because it's the energies that are a little bit more relevant than the actual specific thing that you may be holding on to in your mind. Does that make sense?
Maybe I'll have to go back and watch this, because I'm kind of trying to cherry pick what else I can talk about in the next few minutes.
Well, you can cherry pick, you can continue to move through questions. However, if you wish, we can always explore some of these things a little bit more in-depthly. Because if you feel you're only partially understanding that which we're saying, we are happy to dive in a little bit more. So you can really derive greater insight from some of these questions that you have created for yourself.
Well, all right, I'll just keep going down the list, and maybe I'll have another session someday. Um, free will. My former favorite teacher and guide convinced me that our behavior is completely a result of our environments and there is no free will, which made perfect sense to me. But according to you, that's wrong. And I don't know what to think. I mean, it seems like you're not choosing what I'm saying. I'm not choosing how you're responding. It seems like everything's just happening reflexively. Is everyone lying or?
Well, the idea is that there are different levels, so to say, of what you might consider to be will or free will. What we mean by this is you have the ability to operate and make choices from different levels of your consciousness. There are some levels of your consciousness that are what you would consider to be reactive levels, where an individual is not really utilizing the idea of their own imagination, their own creativity to respond instead of reacting to situations. So a person who is simply reacting to life instead of responding from our perspective would not be an individual who is really utilizing the idea of their free will consciously. But ironically, their soul has used its free will to create a version of itself through the incarnation that is experiencing that. So you must keep in mind it's a bit of a paradox. And the more in alignment with the idea of your soul, your higher self you are, the more access to that free will of that level you then have as the incarnation. So you have the ability to respond to things instead of reacting to them.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just kind of confusing because I feel like there's so much conflicting information, and this teacher who I used to revere, all of a sudden I feel like now is lying to people, and are we all lying to people and without even knowing it?
In a sense, you could say that you are playing tricks on one another. In a sense that you are all wearing these costumes you consider to be your human bodies, which in many ways do not reflect the totality of what you are. So you could say you are all playing trick or treat with one another, if you will.
Interesting. Cool. Well, let's see, I'll skip that one. Hot topic right now being viruses. As you deal with many different beings from many different places. Do you have any concerns, or do you take precautions about that? Is there any interspecies contamination?
By the time we, as Sasani, are having direct interactions with species of other worlds, they are also a vibrational match for us, where certain things like disease, in a negative way, do not exist. That phenomenon reoccurs in certain frequency ranges of reality. So for us, the civilizations we interact with directly, especially because we're quasi-physical, must also be a match for us. So those are not really things that we have to concern ourselves with. Species whom are not on our level, whom would be creating those things, those are not the species we make direct contact with. There are other species that come to them before we do.
So I guess after a certain energetic level, there's no more virulence or.
Precisely. Things begin to work symbiotically with each other.
Interesting. Cool. I've heard you say when we speak to you, we're kind of speaking to our higher mind. Does that mean that we are your lower mind?
If you wanted to look at it that way, you could do so. However, we observe what you would consider to be the lower self more so as the ego. And that's not a judgment or anything of that sort. It simply is the recognition that the lower self is the self that has created different certain levels of separation to have a certain thematic experience. Being in a body, being on a planet. To us, that's what we would consider to be our lower self. The higher self being the one knowing that the whole thing is a dream and that they are the ones dreaming it. So we see you as a species in a way that's similar to us. You're simply learning to come into greater alignment with your higher selves. And many of you have fed your lower selves different belief systems and ideas that create what you would consider to be negative expressions of the lower self. But the idea of higher self and lower self is not a value thing, or a morality thing, or a worth thing. It's just a vibrational thing. One self is vibrationally higher, the other self vibrationally lower. Does that make sense for you?
Yeah, I think so. Was that a timer that just went off?
That is our timer. It has been about an hour, and we thank you for this unique conversation, for your curiosity. And as always, our civilization's unconditional love, joy, and appreciation to you.
Thank you, and love to you guys as well. And I've got a lot more questions, so maybe I'll have to do another one of these.
All right, all right. Have fun and keep playing.
Thanks.